Look, action figures, dolls, whatever you want to call them, we all played with them at some point in our lives. And as horror fans, most of us have a favorite doll. He's a good guy doll, and his name's Chucky. And today I want to ask you guys, what the hell went wrong with Chucky? Hey, what's up everybody? Nick here, and today I want to talk to you guys about our favorite doll, Chucky. Now, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Mark, Saturn Video, for giving me the idea to do a What Went Wrong with Chucky video. If you guys have been following my channel for any amount of time, you know I did a series on the Halloween movies, and I just did one recently on A Nightmare on Elm Street. But once my buddy Mark chimed in and asked me to do one on Chucky, I was like, wow, why have I not thought of this yet? Because of all of these horror properties, one of the most problematic is easily the Child's Play franchise. To trace Chucky back to his beginning, he debuted in 1988's Child's Play. And it was a horror film, but it was a lot more a mystery. It was like an old school monster movie in a lot of ways, where you didn't get to see this killer till near the end of the movie. And for a lot of it, you thought, maybe I'm seeing things? Gotta be some other explanation here, right? Nope, it was a killer doll, possessed by a serial killer. And that would catapult Child's Play into popularity, where we would get sequel after sequel. The character of Chucky the Killer Doll would become synonymous with horror films, even now, almost 4 decades later. But with a property that was so popular and so profitable at one point, what happened that made this thing go off the rails? Look, you can look throughout this franchise's history and you can probably point at a moment where you really think it went wrong. Whether that's Child's Play 3 and how it deviated from the formula in a lot of ways. Whether that's Bride of Chucky, where the franchise took a complete left turn and we got this heavy metal tag team horror film with a lot of jokes. There's many areas where this franchise has deviated from formula for better or worse. But I'm here to say what went wrong with Chucky is actually pretty simple. It was giving Don Mancini full creative control over this franchise. Now look, before anybody comes at me, anybody that's a big Chucky fan, understand that I am too. I have loved Chucky since I was a little kid. And that's not to say that Don hasn't contributed amazing things to this franchise, because he absolutely has. But look, all you have to do is trace back to the point where Don Mancini took over complete creative control in this franchise to see where it all started to go wrong. And look no further than 2004's Seed of Chucky. For starters, I want to give credit where credit's due. Don Mancini has been a part of this franchise from the very beginning. He is a co-writer on the first 4 movies before he took over as director with Seed of Chucky. Having said that, the inception of the character of Chucky and Charles Lee Ray is more to do with Tom Holland than it is with Don Mancini. Don Mancini has famously said over the years that about 50% of what is in the Child's Play film from 1988 is his. I'd say that's being generous. You can go back and read Don Mancini's original screenplay for Child's Play in 1988, and you can definitely see the massive differences there before other people came on board and made this what it actually ended up becoming. That's not to say that Don doesn't get some credit, because he absolutely does. But if Don Mancini had his way from the very beginning, Child's Play would not be the iconic horror franchise that it is today. And that's just a fact. Now, again, he co-wrote Child's Play 2 and Child's Play 3, and those are both great movies, as well as Bride of Chucky, which is a great movie. Very tonally different from the previous movies, but still, in my opinion, a great movie. However, when he took over as director with Seed of Chucky, Don Mancini really wanted to go for it. And while I can understand that he was like, hey, this is my baby, it's been my baby for the longest time, and now I get to call the shots, I think he got a little overzealous. It shows in the reception to that movie. Look, Bride of Chucky was a huge hit. It made $50 million. That's a big deal for a killer doll movie in the late 90s. So of course a sequel was greenlit. Well, unfortunately, Seed of Chucky didn't even make half of what Bride of Chucky made. It was trashed by critics and fans alike, and it's only recently been reevaluated by some fans and called a cult classic. Sure, there are elements of Seed of Chucky that were way ahead of their time, and I think say a lot of important things. Go back and watch the movie if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's become a movie that's championed by the LGBTQ+ community, and for good reason. However, that doesn't make it a good movie on the whole. Look, Seed of Chucky went for broke. Completely went balls to the wall with the jokes, with no suspense, and with this like meta storyline that was trying to say a lot more than it actually ended up saying because it was handled so poorly. I think a lot of the ideas Don had with this movie were actually pretty solid. However, I don't think they were executed well at all. Look, Chucky has always been kind of a funny character in a way. Let's not lie. He's like a 1-foot doll. I don't know if you were like me as a kid, but I always used to think I wouldn't be scared of that thing. I could punt that thing across the room. Yet you still didn't want to be found in the room with Chucky. However, this movie turned it up to like 15. Like, hey, we've got Chucky making Britney Spears puns and whacking it in a bathroom to Fangoria. And it's just like, what are we doing? And look, I'm going to maintain, even in Bride of Chucky, there are moments in that movie that are still frightening when you're a kid watching it. But I don't think you can find anything in Seed of Chucky that you could ever say at any point you were like, oh my God, that freaked me out. See, the problem is when you do something like this to a character, whether it be Seed of Chucky or Freddy's Dead, you are saying you believe this is what the public wants from this character. You believe these are the aspects of the character that make them so marketable to the public. And just like they saw with Freddy's Dead in the 90s, a lesson had to be learned in the 2000s that that's not what people want from Chucky. They want a balance there, for sure. They want Chucky to be cracking jokes. They want these movies to be tongue-in-cheek in a way. But they also still want their serial killer doll to have some air of menace about him. And there is none of that in Seed of Chucky. Not to mention the parentage storyline, which comes out of left field, makes no anatomical sense at all, and potentially breaks rules of Chucky in the first place, and the way that's handled is even worse. It's just a joke. Like, it's solely just a joke. Everything in Seed of Chucky is a joke. Now, the thing is, Don Mancini thought that everybody else was in on the joke, but we weren't at all. Seed was really just the beginning. It was nowhere near the end of this journey for Chucky. See, the franchise would lay dormant for about a decade until Curse of Chucky came around. Now, I loved Curse of Chucky, but what was the common thread here? After Seed of Chucky was panned by critics and audiences, Don Mancini knew he had to go back to the drawing board and bring people back on board with Child's Play. So Curse of Chucky was much more old school. It was a soft reboot in a lot of ways. It went back to the suspense. Sure, Chucky had his one-liners and his moments, but it was much more like the original movie, where there is this looming threat of this character, and it's treated like a monster movie, but we're not getting oversaturated with his presence and his jokiness. And Curse of Chucky, I loved. But then, when that was received well, what did Don Mancini do? He went back to the well and doubled down on all the zany and all the weird and all the nonsensical, not to mention all the breaking of the rules, with Cult of Chucky, which again, somehow was rated well by critics, but most fans are not a big fan of that movie. Why? Because it leaned a lot more into the elements that we got with Seed of Chucky, which just seemed all over the place and seemed halfway thought out. So when the fans expressed at best a lukewarm response to that movie, then we got a TV series years later, where Don Mancini felt like having a long-running series with 8 to 10 episodes per season, he could really flesh out these ideas and these characters. Now in the first season, what did he do? He tried to go back to basics a little bit. He tried to reel it in a little bit and bring people on board with Chucky. And when that season was deemed a success, both critically and commercially, that's when Don Mancini went right back to the well again. So what's the common thread here? Don Mancini craps the bed, brings people back in, craps the bed again, brings people back in, and then craps the bed. Don Mancini can't help himself. He is his own worst enemy. As soon as he gets any words of affirmation from the people that watch these things and support them, he goes, cool, you like that? Now watch this. I'll take a giant shit and throw it at your face, and you're gonna love it. Now look, that's not to say that there isn't stuff to love in the Child's Play TV series, because there absolutely is. But look, I am telling you right now, by the time you get midway through season 2, you're either on board or you are not. And if you're not on board by that point, you are never going to be on board, because the show only gets zanier. I just don't think that that is the space that Chucky needs to exist in. I think you can walk that line. I think some of the best movies in this series, if not the best, walk that line perfectly. Child's Play 2 and Bride of Chucky are two I look at. Child's Play 2 isn't as jokey as Bride of Chucky, but I mean in the sense of you get a lot more Chucky in that movie. It's no longer a mystery. but they walked the line so perfectly. And Bride of Chucky, yeah, it's a lot jokier, it's a lot more fun, but still, they walked that line well enough to where you still fear this character, and the advent of Tiffany to the fold only helps up the ante in that movie. But then you get movies like Seed of Chucky that just go way overboard, or Cult of Chucky that just go way overboard. They don't make a lot of sense. You feel like there was some decent ideas there somewhere, but he never really took the time to flesh them out. He just got ahead of his skis, got excited, and vomited it all over the page, and then it went on the screen. Now look, who am I? I'm just a modest YouTuber, okay? I'm nobody. I'm not here to tear down Don Mancini. He's done great things with his career. He's made far more money than I ever will, all right? That's just a fact. Far more accomplished. However, as a fan of this series, and a fan since I was a kid, I think it is undeniable to say where Child's Play went wrong, whether it went wrong there for you or not, you might have still loved it. But with the general public and making this a viable franchise was when Don Mancini took the reins fully over and did whatever the hell he wanted. Because for every good contribution he made to this series, he made just as many bad ones, I would even argue more bad ones than good ones. And that's why when the remake was announced in 2018, I was super excited because I wanted to see a new era of Chucky. I was done with what we had gotten up to that point. Look, I love Brad Dourif. I love all of those movies aside from Seed and Cult. But I was ready to move on. I just felt like it was played out. But Don Mancini wouldn't allow it. No, Don Mancini had to go to the internet and talk about how this is hashtag not my Chucky. I'm going to be honest with you guys. At this point today, where we sit, I think that original run of Chucky is gone. I think it's done. Maybe Don Mancini scratches together the financing to get a straight-to-video movie out again, but it's not going to make any waves, and it's not going to bring this franchise back in a way that I think a lot of us Chucky fans would like to see it be brought back. Child's Play 2019 was our best bet at getting a new era of Chucky that could live on for years and years. But sadly, the powers that be didn't want to see that happen. And instead, we saw Don Mancini double down on the things that hadn't worked up to that point. And what did they do? You guessed it. They didn't work again. So look, this isn't about whether or not you liked that era of Chucky. If you like what Don Mancini did more than you dislike it, that's not really the point. As I've said, I love a lot of his contributions to this franchise, and Curse of Chucky is a top 3 Child's Play movie for me. Yeah, he wrote and directed it, right? So I'm not a Don Mancini hater. But if you ask me the question, where did Child's Play go wrong? It's simple. It is when Don Mancini seized control over the franchise, because ever since then, Chucky's never been the same. But look guys, I want to know what you think down below in the comments section. Do you agree that when the franchise took a turn with public sentiment, it was with Don Mancini taking over full control? Or do you disagree? Is there some other era of Child's Play that I'm missing? Because whether you love that era or not, I feel like it's pretty cut and dry that that's what happened. But I want to hear your thoughts down below, and I want to hear what you want to see from this franchise moving forward. So make sure to sound off in the comments section. I want to thank you so much for watching. You know what to do. Leave a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell for notifications. What are you doing? I post content every day. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.